One of the biggest mistakes in manifestation is people thinking that manifestation is literal. But the truth is, in my understanding, that manifestation is actually expressive. Imagine you knew how to cook French toast. Would you ask someone else on advice on how to make French toast if you already knew how to make French toast? If you were to do that, it would suggest that you don't actually know how to make French toast. Questionable analogy, but the point I make with that is that this is kind of what so many people do when they watch so much content surrounding a subject that seems so elusive. Manifestation enters into topics such as the neurological, which is scientific. It enters into the psychological, which is the mind. It enters into the esoteric, which is the spiritual. And all these things come together and they make a physical, tangible fact. And because the subject matter in itself is really elusive, and there's almost no practical application where someone holds your hand and spoon feeds you, many people are left to fend for themselves and buy courses on self-help. But self-help doesn't really help anyone. Self-taught people, on the other hand, can excel where other people don't. But self-help has this connotation to it where it has this hustle culture peppered in, where it makes you feel like you've got to do more. And more is actually less, because you get burnt out doing so many things. They tell you to be obsessive. They tell you to let go. They tell you to keep thinking about your desire. But when you follow this advice, it can burn you the crap out. And you are probably questioning yourself, where is the thing? Where is the desire that you want so badly? The change. And this is what I'm saying. People are trying to control the literal outcome, the literal result, when in fact, so many people mistake that manifestation is expressive. There are certain principles that we need to understand this clearly. The first principle I'm going to share with you right now is the principle of the locus of control and the law of the antithesis. The law of the antithesis basically means if there's dark, there's light. If there's cold, there's hot. And neither can exist without the other. And simultaneously, both can be inverted and or exist simultaneously at the same time. If that sounds a little confusing, I recommend reading the book called The Kabbalion. Now, if we understand the law of the antithesis, then we can look at the locus of control. And the locus of control is knowing what is in and what is out. What is in your control, what is outside of your control. There are things in manifestation. There are things in your life that are within your control. And there are things outside of your life that are outside of your control. So by trying to meddle with the things that are outside of your control, beyond your control, it can kind of be no wonder why things don't really work out the way we want them to. Whereas if we focus on the internal locus, the locus within our control, we can change the needle. We can move things forward in a much more preferable direction. And there's different types of locuses within other different types of locuses. For example, internal locus can refer to the literal external things that you can control. You can pick up a coffee cup and you can sip out of it. But then there's also the literal internal locus of control, which is within your spirit per se, or within your mind. So there's literally an external and internal locus within our already established internal locus. And you can actually multiply this, synthesize this. I forgot to mention there's also middle grounds, and some things don't have middle grounds, so just keep that in mind. But the point remains, these are very important principles to understand. And it is the things within our control that we need to be paying attention to. And this is actually a skill. Going back to the law of the antithesis, we can synthesize that if we look at less is more versus more is less, you can see how this can apply in your own active verb of manifestation, as opposed to the noun of manifestation. Many great books often talk about kind of being still or motionless, taking less action. Less action is more action. But here's the problem. People fix themselves in this state, while other people, like in the hustle culture community, fixate themselves into those spectrums. They stay locked in. And so we have the fixed mindset, which is one of the most toxic mindsets that we can inhabit. The fixed mindset keeps us locked in, particularly in a habit, a homeostasis, or an identity. Another principle I'd like to introduce to you is The one that I live by, personally, there is more than one way to skin a cat. Understanding that there is multiple answers. There's multiple truths to something. And if you read the book The Kabbalion that I recommended, there's a law called the law of rhythm, or the principle of rhythm. And basically it just means things go up and things go down. And so how I like to see it, with hustle culture, for example, you're trying to actively manipulate things and it's really unsustainable. It's very much like putting a pot of water on the stove. Now, it is actually important for you to be able to successfully boil the water that the stove must be on a high heat and the water must boil, right? But hustle culture doesn't tell you to turn off the machine necessarily. It keeps you fixed there. If the pot of water is fixed at boiling point for more than the necessary time, what do you think is going to happen? The water is going to evaporate, the pot will melt on the stove. It's just unsustainable. And then you have other people thinking that, oh, well, if I just think that the pot of water is going to get boiled by itself, if I don't do anything, then you're kind of stuck in there. With the law of rhythm, you know when to move forward and you know when to move back. You know when and where to turn the stove on to high, and you know when to turn it back off. This is my approach. This is the more successful approach. And when it comes to this active sort of duty of moving back and forth in an appropriate manner, this is important to understand in relation to our identity. Because our identity is made up of a sum total of various beliefs and paradigms and affirmations that are set in stone in our heart. And these affirmations and beliefs send out vibrations, supposedly. But what these vibrations do is they actually relocate back to you, which basically means you attract what you are. You are the sum total of your beliefs. So if we go back to the law of the antithesis, you can see what's inside of your control and you can see what's outside of your control. You don't control exactly when and where, many times. Sometimes you can, but for the most part, you don't necessarily control when, where, and how things are going to come about. Some things are within your control. You can brute force things into existence. Other things need to bloom and manifest in their own time. And one of the best ways to allow that to happen is, I guess, lay back, take action in the form of changing your internal dialogue, changing your mindset, changing your identity. Because it is your identity that is attracting things to you. It is your identity and the lens in which you see the world that is coloring the things that you see. If you've ever heard of the reticular activating system, this is kind of like your brain or nervous system filtering out things deliberately so that you can't see them. This can go hand in hand with confirmation bias, which often works against you, but it can be used to your advantage if you know how to turn it around. And all you have to do is start pretending to be someone else. You start practicing new affirmations, new beliefs. And for me, one of them is the less is more. Because for a long time, I was personally doing more and I was only getting less results. It's like trying harder, people are pushed away or repulsed, or you don't really get the thing that you want. But the less you try, the easier things just seem to come about. When I personally identify with the belief that things easily work out in my favor, and apparently there was a scientific study done this, is that I don't need to panic when things don't go my way. If things go south side, I look at my past behavior and I'm like, I don't really need to feel that way. I can just feel calm now. And one of the ways I feel calm now is kind of being in the knowing of how manifestation mechanically works. And mechanically, it may not necessarily be a mechanical nature. It may be more of an art or an imaginative nature, which obviously sounds much more elusive, which can be explaining why it's so challenging to grasp sometimes. But when you're in the knowing, like me, you come to understand that manifestation is expressive, not literal. You don't necessarily command fire to come falling out of the sky. Instead, you identify that you are someone who is clean. The shit on your ass doesn't clean itself. You clean it. The literal fact of having a clean ass comes as a result of the expression of your identity of being clean.